Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of Economic Preppers. I'm here with Patrick and Dylan, as always. How you guys doing?
I am well.
Doing great.
My name, man. I had a really great day. Of course, you could tell I was talking to people today.
Yeah, Patrick, before I get into it, you've been a busy guy lately. We'll get to you in a second, but let's introduce our guest. Bill Noble is here today. Welcome, Bill. Let me share the screen and let everybody know how to follow Bill, get a hold of Bill. This is Notorious Bill. He's at crypto_noble on Twitter. He's also on YouTube, and I'll get that shared up in just a moment. But, Bill, welcome to the show. We really enjoyed having you in Dallas last October, and welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
Awesome. So we're going to have a lot of comments from Bill. He's going to help us with some market analysis. He does a fantastic job with that. We'll highlight that somewhere in the middle of the show. But, Bill, feel free to chime in on any topic that we're going through here, which is four guys talking about what's going on in the news this week on topics that we normally can't talk about. We're going to try to anyway. But, Patrick, you've been talking a lot. Let's jump into that. But why did your name get so big, and what are you doing that's you're on these shows everywhere? It seems I can't turn on YouTube anywhere without finding Patrick.
Just got long because we started this tax service that we were helping people with, and I was at the VRIC this weekend and just been on a lot of shows. So I'm going through like an identity crisis, I think, and I'm okay with that. But it's been really a wild couple of weeks. I just got to be on Nobody's Special Finances show. So there's a good, cool recording coming out tomorrow, or it'll be tomorrow for you guys when you see it, the audience, and just been really fun. And then today I get a little bit of a break watching Bill do the Bitcoin section because I just get to sit back and learn and really just become more convicted that my opinions are correct.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good opinion. And Bitcoin has been moving lately, but Patrick's been moving a lot too. We will talk about the conference we just got back from Vancouver. Saw some snow, experienced negative temperatures. What they were in Celsius though, which was fortunate, but still way too cold. And it didn't make Oregon feel much warmer. I will have to say that. So that was a sidebar plus, despite the snow that we had to drive through on Tuesday. But
yeah,
let's go ahead.
Wear a hat
and
grow your hair out. I was saying, you guys just need to wear hats and grow your hair out when you are in cold climates.
Dude, I grew a beard.
All right, well, I don't have the grow your hair out option, hence the baseball.
Hats, my friends, hats and turtlenecks.
There we go.
That's how you survive those negative temperatures.
Yeah, I see that the Oregon skull cap thing is like pretty much mandatory. So I'm gonna have to be getting those kinds of hats and got to keep warm. And I think they say you lose like half your heat through your head. So yeah, it's been chilly. It's been chilly everywhere, actually. I've been keeping track of my former stomping grounds in South Carolina. Hasn't been warm really there either. There's kind of a climate change going on. Imagine that. But that's what it's supposed to do. It's called seasons. But and before we get into all that fun stuff, let's talk about our first story of the day, which is about a little bit of everything. So we got bonds and big tech and Bitcoin and bullion blasting off. Basically, this is a story. I won't read the whole title here because it's a pushing title. But basically, this is talking about the Fed met this week and they raised interest rates yet again, but only 25 basis points, which is a quarter of a point. And they're basically saying that they might be done because it takes 12 to 24 months for this to ripple across the financial world. So, Dylan, what do you think about the quarter point moving up? What are your thoughts here?
I mean, that seems to be exactly what everyone was expecting. So it just seems to be on the trend that the Fed has set out over the past few months, just raising rates, and they've just gradually lowered how much they're raising, but they still have raised it a bunch. So that still will have to take time to play out to see the impact of these increased rates on the economy.
Bill, I have to get your opinion on this. What do you think about what the Fed's doing these days?
Well, I think Jerome had to stop himself out of his Paul Volcker fantasy with all available speed, given the layoffs that are coming from the tech community and no doubt the intense phone calls reaching congressmen and the president of the United States, right? So if you go to the Fed statement, I'm reading The committee's assessment will take into account a wide range of information, phone calls from the White House, including readings on labor market conditions, inflation pressures, and inflation expectations, and the most important word, and financial and international developments. It's like, what developments, Jerome? Do you know something that we don't, like the system's broken? But this audience already knows all that. So, they had to stop breaking things before they really broke things, which is why he did what he did. And, every Zero Hedge makes fun of him that he chickened out on inflation. Actually, maybe he should be commended for just saying politely, I'm wrong, and I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, I think that it did go in line with what everybody was expecting, but I think everybody's just kind of laughing at the Fed because it's just the impact is so minimal these days. But it's kind of a dog and pony show just to save face. But Patrick, you saw some other changes in the DXY. Do you want to talk about what the Fed did and how that impacted the dollar?
Yeah, sure. So we saw the DXY as soon as he started talking. One thing we didn't mention is we expect also, based on his meeting yesterday, that there's going to be 2 more 25 basis point increases. That's pretty much what we're calling out for. But to me, I didn't really think it was going to have much of an impact because it was just what was expected. Everyone knew that's what we were prepared for. I think it was like 91% in favor of 25 basis points. And then that happened. So you would expect really not much of a change. But then all of a sudden, the DXY just started crashing as soon as the Fed meeting started happening. And of course, you saw my tweet. It was, is Bitcoin ready to pump right now? Because the reality is we've been talking about this for a while, and expecting this volatility is something we were expecting. So this to me is like totally a Fed-induced pump, and the DXY just crashing. You saw Bitcoin, gold, silver all going up today. Silver went up to 24.5, I think, or something like that today. And the DXY hit almost $100.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the silver and the premiums and the $24 and how that doesn't match. But we'll talk about what we learned over at the Vancouver Resources and Investment Conference, right? I think I got that right, Patrick. Did I finally get that right?
You've never got it right.
I think that's the first time. I keep saying recession and inflation conference, but those are different topics entirely. But yeah, I think that there's a lot going on in the economy, and there's lots of news that's popping up there, and we have to stay on top of this as best as we can. Let's see the next story that we wanted to hit on real quick. Oh yeah, California. Oh boy. So California has got yet another nutty scheme of how they want to extract value from, or extract dollars from people as best they can. This one really, it's hilarious. It's again, this is like they're overstepping. They're trying to get money from people however they can, in currency. I shouldn't say money, but they're trying to tax the rich, and even if they leave the state, to get them their assets outside of California. They want to get a worldwide tax, they called it, and it's just it's going to drive people out of the state, and just like it's going to be lawsuits. It's insane. But this is what happens when you have places that are running out of money, they're running out of ability to work their budget and ability to spend things and cover things. So which of you guys want to chime in on this one? Who wants to go first or chime in on California's insanity?
I'll go.
All right, Bill.
So California needs to worry about running out of water. Okay, not other people's money. And then when you see these type of bills, ask yourself this question. Is this move really about money and the budget? Like, how much money are they really going to get? Or is it about control, right? They don't have, I call it the supplemental, the experimental health supplement. They don't have that as a mechanism of control. So they have to maybe resort to something else. So you have to always be on lookout for the something else. Like I'm here in Austin, Texas. You guys are talking about weather. How about a 4-day power outage from an ice storm and the government going, oh, well, can't get the power back on. Sorry. I just feel like it's either about control or it's about fear. And this move from California is probably both.
Yeah, they don't want to give up on either one. Any method to control fear, energy, whatever they can to control people. Patrick, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I didn't even think of it like that. And now that you say it that way, it again opens my eyes a little bit more because my aunt lives in California, and I, of course, watch Travis, Economic Ninja, and they're in California. So I hear about these things, but I just didn't see them when I was reading about this. So that's a really interesting perspective. But the idea of them trying to control us doesn't sound very surprising at all. They just want to get ready for us to talk about CBDCs, and accept their method of control over how we spend our money and where we spend our money. And I don't know. The idea that it's all about control is not surprising to me. I just didn't really see it that way, which makes me a little ashamed of myself, actually.
Well, that's exactly what they want, right? They want to look at this, but don't pay attention to this. What they're really trying to accomplish, they try to distract you with a different story. So, Dylan, what are the sentiments out there in Colorado for you?
So when I hear this, it's just, to me, it's them creating friction, right? Because the whole idea, if you get money into something, you want to make it easy for money to flow or resources to flow in, but you want to make it hard for them to flow out. And California does have an abundance of resources, abundance of wealth, and people want to be there. But they've been putting these policies in place that now, like that one, the global worldwide tax is what it looked like. So if you leave California, you can be taxed on the wealth that you take with you up to a certain amount of time or years afterwards, right? So they want to make it harder and harder to extract resources from, like Bill said, from their area of control. And I don't know, when I see that happening, some people are going to be proactive and make moves earlier on and shake things up. I mean, there's big programs, big media companies out there that have moved from California to Florida because of this in the past few years. But what's going to do is it's going to slow down a lot of people from doing it. And then certain people that are going to try too late, they're going to get caught, right? They're going to get got by the new laws and regulations that get put into place, which is no good.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a buzzer go off. I didn't mean to. That wasn't a time clock there, Dylan, but that was a good answer. But I think it's interesting. We're not going to talk too much about real estate because it's not changing too much. But it's interesting that they're attacking the wealthy, and these are exactly the people that can leave the state the easiest. So it's going to be really interesting if this starts trickling down to other people in California that'll have difficulty selling their real estate to move to a different state. But it's choosing where you live and choosing what you're affected by. It's going to matter a lot as we move forward and they try to extract as much control as possible. Speaking of which, they're already greasing the skids for another method that a lot of us like to use and a lot of change that's been happening lately, which is over on Twitter. So Twitter, first, we know about PayPal and the fact that they could fine you for $2,500 just because you sneezed the wrong way on PayPal. So PayPal is not doing so great there, but Twitter is looking at taking payments in some way, shape, or form. It could include crypto, include other things. We'll have to see. But Bill, you're big on Twitter with Crypto Noble. What do you think of what is your take on what Elon's doing and these potentially on and off rails for paying people or tipping them for their contributions over on Twitter?
Yeah, there used to be a big word in Silicon Valley, like, we're going to disrupt everything. We're going to disrupt the system. We're going to develop a startup and have venture capital and disrupt everything. Well, excellent. Elon's got enough money. Now he's going to go disrupt you. Who's you? I don't know. Everybody, Meta, PayPal, Google, etc. The whole lot of them. So Elon's going to be like, I'm going to buy Twitter and I'm going to get Bitcoin payments running on that. Right? Because Jack should have done that from the beginning. Hey, how about free speech? And hey, maybe we can go multimedia and have we'll have like an Instagram, YouTube, Twitter combo, right? He's going to make like Twitter into, WeChat without the surveillance, the all-encompassing thing that you just need for your daily life. And everybody thinks Elon made a mistake with Twitter, and he didn't. I mean, I think they should give Elon the Nobel Peace Prize just for trying to disrupt Silicon Valley. That's just me.
Yeah, we won't go in. Those prizes are often given to people that they rather they want to make prominent versus actually deserving recipients. But that's an entirely different conversation. But
yeah, because I remember one time someone got the Nobel Peace Prize, and I was like, I feel like I could have got one then too. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, the standards don't make sense. Like, I've done more than that.
Well, maybe you guys need to start. Maybe we need to make a new award then.
Maybe, but person of the year and all the other things that they trot out there, or woman of the year. Typically, there's definitely a political angle to it, without question. But
Oh, you could totally
Twitter's
see that happening. Twitter would be a great space for that. Hey, everyone, vote. And if you vote, you have to pay 1 Dogecoin. And at the end, whoever wins gets all the Dogecoin. Like, that is totally legitimate. Elon could do that.
Yeah,
There's
he could
so many
certainly do that.
opportunities.
Yeah, I think with Twitter, the new ownership of that platform and what's being not just shared about what happened prior to this, but also the path forward. I think there's a lot of potential there. Dylan, where do you see the Twitter going in the next year or two with the new ownership and the potential for pay rails?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing to have pay rails on Twitter. I think that's a good thing. I like how he allowed users to pay to be verified. I think there's more work to do there, and I saw something a little bit ago about them talking about advertisers pulling out of the platform. I think it's a fair conversation to have. Is do you really want big time advertisers spending, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars on social platforms like Twitter, like Facebook, like Instagram? Is there a line that should be drawn? I think that's an important conversation to have about what we allow into our spaces of public conversation. And I think Elon buying Twitter kind of forces that conversation, because he's an outsider to that Silicon Valley group, and he's mixing things up, and he's willing to take the hit and take the risks, and that changes the game plan for a lot of the other players in that space. So I think it's a good thing overall.
Yeah, I really like the idea of paying contributors to Twitter that improve the space and letting the people decide what's valuable. I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I know other sites have tried that, but nothing as large as Twitter. So this could be very interesting for not just the platform, but also the currencies that are chosen. So
Well, I think it's already shown that, right? It's shown that the people believe it's valuable. Spaces became the #1 place you were going for news when anything broke anywhere crypto related. You don't even care what the news says anymore. I think like NBC and Fox, these guys should really be worried, because what you have are the ability for people like Bill and his team to get real live data from real live people that we really trust, and we know the source is right there on their public profile, and you could see who they are. Like, it's so simple and easy to use. You can get thousands of people. Sometimes there were like 20,000 people on live streams just streaming on Spaces. So the idea for that the ability to be provided for and supported by your community by such a small fraction, or 1 Satoshi, or whatever he may choose to do, many hands make light work. And when you get more pure information, that's more valued. You'd rather pay a couple of pennies to get the best information right from the source. Even with FTX, you saw them. They were bringing on the insiders. Like they were saying, we are talking to someone who actually was verified as an insider through our process. They didn't just have random people on there who wanted to get paid. So that improved credibility, and now you go there for real news. So Elon has really made a huge change. It was a big ripple effect that he has created in the industry.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the media in the last few years, the phrase that everyone throws around is, we are the news now. You can see it in the viewership. I think Economic Ninja we talked to in Vancouver, he's got more views than CNN. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's happening, and eyeballs dictate. Eyeballs tell you like where is the attention spent, and that's where the attention goes. That's where the news is found, and that's where the dollars or the whatever the payments are should follow and dictate. But speaking of dollars and control, we got one more news story to cover before Bill breaks it all down for us with the crypto outlook. But this story, it's kind of more of a world view. It's South Africa and their energy crisis. Now, I read through this, and I'll go through some of the story a little bit. But basically, South Africa, their biggest power company. Let's see, I forget the name of it. Probably doesn't matter. Exxon, I think it is. But they have rolling blackouts on various degrees from stage 1 to stage 8. Stage 8, you can be reducing power for half of the day. So it's really impacting critical things, including dairy producers who have to throw out product. So controlling energy control and the access to the ability to exist through energy is still a major control mechanism, not just the media in which you get told or fed by the mainstream media, but also how much energy you can have and how much you can actually live and exist. So I'm curious to see, Bill, what your thoughts are about like the fight over energy across the globe.
Okay, well, I mean, the first thing this reminds me of is, just the general ineptitude of governments. Let's just look at it at face value. The primary job of government is to protect the people. Keeping the lights on would be a part of that. So we're having trouble doing that in Austin, Texas. Governments don't always get it right. Now, in terms of control, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? You don't know if the legitimate energy shortage is being used, I don't know, the way they use COVID-0 in China to just see how much people can take. Like, how far can we push people before they pick up pitchforks and charge them out? You know what I mean? So when I see that, it's like, not only is it an attempt at control, but I think they're also like, they want to see how far they can push people before they break.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that all across the board. We talked about that recently on the last week or week before about Bank of America and the inability of people to get their funds out. I still contend that was a test because it was on a Wednesday after a bank holiday before everybody gets paid on Thursday or Friday. Screams like a test to me of, like, again, another control mechanism, access to your funds. But Dylan, what do you think about the access to power and the control mechanism there?
Yeah. Actually, the other day I was at a bar and I was talking to someone who works on the power grid in Texas. So he has to schedule load in Texas. And we got talking about Bitcoin miners on the, I know it's a slightly different topic, but talking about Bitcoin miners in the Texas grid and how their arrival over the past few years has thrown a wrench into them predicting how much power they'll require, how much power generation that industry will take up. I know, Patrick, you're saying you're crying, and I think it's a good thing they're moving down.
Man, we paid so much money for that inconvenience. Spare me that. You did a job and you charged us so much, and we improved your power grid. Stop complaining.
That was one thing he did mention. He was more complaining on, like, it's just a new thing that he's not experienced with, that he doesn't quite know what to make of it. How it's like a new organism moving into a new ecosystem. And I thought that was very interesting. And it kind of ties into the systems of control for the power system, because if you control the power, right, you can have a lot of control on the people, right? If you can facilitate energy where you want, right, then that's where people will go. They'll be happy. But if you don't like what they're doing or you want to change things, you can always shut it off, or there can be an event, or you can be slower to turn it back on and see how people react.
Now, Patrick, I know you're dying to speak more on the topic, but Bitcoin, you used to mine in Texas. You don't want to talk about it? No?
Why? We have Bill here. Like, I'm not going to waste our airspace with Bill here. We could talk Bitcoin mining anytime, and I always have commentary on Bitcoin and mining in Texas, especially, is very close to my heart. I'm the best looking Arab Texican y'all ever met, and I am so proud of my cowboy boot. So at this point, though, I'm not going to step on Bill. I want to hear what he has to say about Bitcoin, because I want to know if it matches what I think is happening as well. Bill, did you watch our last episode?
I watched most of it.
I hope you don't remember what I said was going to happen or what I thought was going to happen, because I would hope that we would have the same conclusion.
All right. Well, let me kick into it here.
Please validate me.
All right. Let us see what we got. Okay. So here is, the inaugural market update with my friends. Okay. Gold. Everybody is like, wow, I expect a dollar bounce sometime soon. Do you? Gee, why is it that the dollar can only go down like 2 months in a row before everyone expects a bounce? Because in gold, here's what we all had to put up with. Ready? This is a monthly chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down months in gold. Ask yourself this. If gold can go down 7 months in a row, it can go up 7 months in a row. We're only got 3 green candles now. And then when we look at our friend, the dollar index, there's going to be a bounce anytime, right? No, because we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down candles. We could have at least 7. I think you could have up to 9. Okay, this is UUP, the dollar index ETF. Okay, this is the work of Tom DeMark. To make a long story short, it was vertical on the way up, and what goes up one way, physics, can go down exactly the same way. So it's time for people to get off this. The dollar is indestructible, because that was literally on the cover of Bloomberg Business Magazine. And whether you believe the dollar should blow up or not blow up, what we can agree on is that the value of the dollar is too high given the deficits that we run. And there are other forms of money that you can hold, like gold and Bitcoin. Speaking of holding Bitcoin, this is the assets under management for the Bitcoin ETF, BITO. Notice this massive breakout. Okay, I believe this chart from ProShares is implying that Bitcoin should be at 34K, looking at like an adjusted value for assets under management in the ETF.
I believe that's Australian, right?
Assets under management. I don't know if, I think this is the ETF that trades in the US market, I believe. Okay, not sure what the scale is here for the Bitcoin price, but this is what I can tell you. Institutions are after Bitcoin, and they can't get enough physical Bitcoin. They're after the futures contract and the ETF, right? So this is why when you look at Bitcoin on your screens, it doesn't downtick. Right? This top right over here, this is open interest in Bitcoin futures at the CME. Remember when the introduction of Bitcoin futures was like the end of crypto in 2018? What a nightmare. Now it's the other way around. They can't get a hold of physical Bitcoin, so they're grabbing futures, right? The other interesting subtlety here is, as the market went down off FTX, open interest in Bitcoin futures fell, meaning they covered shorts and went long quickly. Who's they? Probably the biggest players in the system. I wouldn't doubt if it was central banks themselves. They got to figure out how to get crypto on their balance sheet. This could be them. What is the Bitcoin trajectory for this year? Well, let's think of Bitcoin maybe like a spring, right? It's like wind it up, wind it up, wind it up, and then boom. That's what it feels like is happening, right? 20,000 is the biggest technical analysis level in the history of crypto. It's the 2017 high. The market spent 6 months below it. Now it's 24K, and everybody wishes they could get it at 19. No, it doesn't work that way. One of the things that Bitcoin could do is just continue to wind up the spring. This is what happened in 2011 and 2012, right? Bitcoin just sort of like wound itself up in a semi-sideways range. And then come summertime, it went straight up. Like nobody's talking about 60, 70K maybe by the end of the summer. Now, I think in the fall, you got to look out for just about everything. There's a lot of people out there talking about crashes. Okay, crashes never happen when people are talking about crashes. Crashes only happen after you've had euphoria. We're so far away from euphoria in crypto, it's not even funny. Right now we're in disbelief, where people don't believe what's really happening, which is that Satoshi's vision is coming true and people are trading it. Okay, so here's some technical analysis that leverages some of William Gann's work and Fibonacci work. Let's keep it simple. I have some legitimate math behind this that you could see an acceleration in Bitcoin in April, and that could end in September with prices near 50K. Let me just ask you this. Let's forget about Satoshi for just a second. Is it so ridiculous to have something go down really fast and go back up the same way? Right? Just like gold, right? Down for 7 months, spike up in 3. Same thing can happen in Bitcoin. And this is undoubtedly going to be driven by, pretty much what we already know, that the everyday person is going to need Bitcoin in their portfolio, right? I onboarded my girlfriend last night. She works for a major university, right, with their sports teams that win national championships. And, if Bitcoin goes up one more time, I'm going to have to do the basketball and swimming team all together. That's how many people want in on Bitcoin. So people know and they're starting to figure it out, particularly after the price of eggs doubles. This is retail and institutions piling in at the same time. Meanwhile, back at the Ethereum ranch, right, the currency of culture, as Novogratz would put it, right? In other words, what is it that you're going to do when you need art or you need music or you want to trade somewhere that's not centralized, like at a place run by SPF? Well, you're going to want Ethereum, right? Ethereum's got a better supply situation. Everyone's tried to kill Ethereum over the last couple of years in a similar way that everybody's tried to dismiss Bitcoin. And all of those people are going to be proven wrong in Bitcoin and in ETH. This is Ethereum dominant. So how much weight does Ethereum carry in the overall equity, in the overall crypto market? So it's a daily chart. It goes way back, and you've got this round formation here that's called a teacup, and you've got this incredibly awful, choppy situation you've had for over a year. That's a handle. And Ethereum might grow in importance from being 20% of the market to being 33% of the market. And my guess is this is a repeat of 2020, where ETH is going to go first. All right. And then big brother Bitcoin is going to follow. So March to June is Ethereum. June to September is Bitcoin. Right. And I'm talking up only, because like I said, do you realize in December, the crypto community was cheering for Binance to fail and cheering for CZ to fail? That was quite some distance away from this division that Satoshi had, which is when legacy starts falling apart, right? And the price of eggs goes, 2x in 2 months. Where do you turn? Avalanche. Let's talk about technology, right? Amazon partners with Avalanche. There was a rally, but not the kind of rally you could see in crypto in past years. Silicon Valley cannot grow revenue. Silicon Valley can only cut costs. That's why Elon, had to unfortunately lay off a lot of people at Twitter. So Silicon Valley's like, you know what? We need to turn to crypto. Now, Avalanche is a technology platform like Ethereum, and Amazon is going to use Avalanche. Avalanche is currently trading at 20, and Avalanche's high in 2021 was 160. And people are like, well, I guess I missed it because it went from 12 to 20. No, this move from 12 to 20 based on the Elliott wave work is a completely normal up move, even if we were still in a downtrend. And guess what? As you can tell by this little formation over here, this thing is breaking out. It's moving past where you would normally stop if it was still a down market, and it's blowing through it. And of course, it's blowing through it because Web3 is not somebody dressed in a bunny costume going, hey, want to buy an NFT or scan my QR code? No. Web3 is the evolution of the internet where we control it instead of, 7 guys in a room. Cardano. I got a great idea. How about we use crypto for a constructive purpose other than, froth and gambling? The guy that runs Cardano wants to do things with healthcare records and, it's not that sexy, but, when you look at this very little complicated chart over here, there's a lot of numbers, but if you look over here, it's green, 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 green. Okay. Every time Cardano goes down, it comes back. I got an idea. How about crypto as something practical and useful? Right? How about taking Satoshi's vision and putting it to work so that people can live a better life free of, just about every oppressor that's out there. I mean, whether you're on the right or whether you're on the left, you can get free with crypto. Now, here comes the kicker of all time. How will you know the Fed has actually turned the printing press back on? This is the one thing Jay didn't tell you the other day. He's like, I think we're going to stop tightening. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that blowing up the whole world. But I'm wondering if underneath the table, something's broken out there and he's going to start printing. Because check out this stock market, Elliott wave count. Tom DeMark has an Elliott wave, system that takes the subjectivity out of it. So 2010 to 2020 was the first part up, 5 waves. Wave 1, COVID crash, wave 2, liquidity frenzy after COVID, wave 3, tightening cycle, wave 4, and now you could have in stocks, wave 5. So as crazy as this sounds, stocks can make a new high. Now, even if you don't believe that, that's okay, because it's hard to believe. But ask yourself this question. If, a technical analyst or a system like Tom DeMark, if you can draw a new high in stocks, why is Bitcoin at 50K so scandalous? It's not. If stocks can make a new high, so can Bitcoin. Like the next cycle, I argue, starts now. Like not massively parabolic, but you could have 3 or 4 months here where I would almost call it the Bitcoin awakening or the Ethereum awakening, where people are like, I need better money and I need a better version of the internet. Right? You know how long that takes for people, how long it takes for people to realize that? About how long it takes people to realize that their power's off and won't be on until Monday. Right? Trouble doesn't make an appointment, and the crypto awakening may not make an appointment. Goldman Sachs, most shorted stock basket. So a classic example of, everyone thinks the same thing, like stocks will go down. So that's what's going to happen. Right? Wrong. Everything that everybody is short is going straight up. Hedge funds getting carried out. Why? Because Jay Powell said the word disinflation 13 times. What does disinflation means? It means, oops, I raised rates too much and broke something, or I'm afraid I'm going to break something. like the U.S. government. Can the U.S. government pay the interest on the debt with Fed funds above 4.5%? No. Underinvested in gold. Don't you love the world? It's like, hey, guys, you read the newspaper lately? Oh, yeah, we read the newspaper. Oh, okay. So when gold goes up, that's the blue line. The histogram is like ETF holdings of GLD. So it's kind of like gold in the equity market. Now, I know holding physical gold is way better, that the paper gold market is, questionable. But the level of selling in gold from May of last year until January of this year, well, that's undoubtedly reflective of the idea that the dollar is king of the world and the Fed is raising rates to 10%. Oh, wait, the dollar isn't king of the world, and Jerome just, whatted out according to the first headline we had, and nobody's long gold. Fascinating, as Mr. Spock would say. And that's the market update.
Wow, so much to unpack there. Patrick, I know you're chomping at the bit. Why don't you go ahead and get that started? What are your thoughts on what Bill presented there?
Thank you. I mean, that was just like really well done and a whole lot more in depth with the entire market than I usually go into. So, what really stuck out to me, I guess, is 2 comments. One is I was on with Nobody Special, right? And you guys know Jacket, Nobody Special. And he said, and point out the word that they use, non-housing services inflation. He said that number several times, like he's not going to do anything until that number turns around. And most people didn't even know what that number was. And I was ashamed to admit, too, that I wasn't even paying attention to it until Jack pointed it out. So, again, it's just really good to have so many people, getting information from and just sharing this knowledge together. So I guess my question is, and I think the one a lot of my viewers would probably be interested in, Bill, what do you think about Bitcoin going on a downturn? Do you see the case for 16 Bitcoin again here before summer?
Okay, so here's how you would get lower Bitcoin, right? In 2018, you had Bitcoin bottom around 3K. And then it gradually made its way up to 14. And then in 2020, it came off and crashed back to 4. I think you're looking at a similar structure, right? In other words, 16, 17, your bottom, 48, 50, your high. And then there can be an event in the fall where, you do see possibly a retest of the current lows. So my thesis is in order to get lower, you have to push people in higher. Because again, everyone keeps asking me, gee, I would love to buy. Is ETH going back to 1200? I'm like, sir, if ETH goes back to 1200, like in the near term, you've probably got a geopolitical event, a tactical nuke or something grim. So I think you can get a retest. I think it's a function of when. I would say the fall, but crystal balls are a dime a dozen.
Sure.
Yeah, time is definitely the hardest thing to predict, and I really thank what you did here, Bill. But Dylan, any thoughts there on what Bill presented?
Seems like we got a lot. I guess the big thing that stood out is there's a lot of things to pay attention to over the next few months. Like a lot of things are brewing. Like when you showed the chart and you said that Bitcoin could wind itself up over the next few months while ETH could launch, and then we have a Bitcoin summer. That means there's going to be a lot of action in the next few months, things to pay attention to, and it's not on a market that you should sleep on. That was one big takeaway, is that the market is waking up, and events are happening that play a significant role in that. And if you want to be prepared for that, then you gotta tune into these shows. You gotta pay attention. You gotta look at what's going on. Otherwise, you could miss a move. You could miss a huge opportunity just because you didn't realize, you didn't take the time to start paying attention.
Yeah, just in the last couple of months, we've seen Bitcoin go up 30%. And my question always is timing. And I've heard we'll talk about what we learned at the Vancouver conference in a minute. But there's a lot of people are suspecting something will happen in the next 6 months, especially with the launch of CBDCs. So between that and the chart that I like to share, which I brought up while Bill was talking about, he used a lot of emotional words of like, disbelief, or we at euphoria. Bill, where would you think that we are on the this classic chart of like psychology of a market? Do you think that we're still on the upslope and are we in a bull trap? Where would you think that we are sentiment wise?
We're in the bottom right-hand corner, right?
Okay.
December was depression. If crypto Twitter was cheering for the end of Binance, which literally could have been the end of crypto itself, that is depression, period. Which, of course, was preceded by anger, panic, denial, anxiety. I mean, you had it all. You had a bankruptcy for every one of those words. Now we're in the sort of the third inning of the disbelief phase. People aren't going to believe this until it's shocking. I'm guessing 26K with maybe an ultimate target of 50 if things get wild. For whatever reason, everybody in crypto gave up on crypto.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that it's important to point out in this chart, and you can find this. I'll make a link to it, but you can find this chart pretty much wherever for like just looking Wall Street emotion. You can find this, but as Bill noted here on the right is disbelief. But I also want to point out that in the bottom left, it repeats. You have disbelief, and you can see what happens if you disbelieve. You can see how this takes off and hope and optimism that we hope it's not a bull trap. And then it just takes off, much like what Bill was saying. So it's really, timing is the hardest thing to predict. And we were in Vancouver last week, or just a few days ago, actually. And we were at the Vancouver, the VRIC conference. And Lynette Zhang, actually, she said, she stuck her neck out and she said, with the CBDCs being launched sometime between May and July, normally something like that, that dramatic of a launch is accompanied by a crisis. So again, not letting any crisis go to waste, we could see it's if you're putting these things together. And again, we're not trying to predict the future, but we're trying to read the tea leaves as best as we can. Something dramatic could happen in the next 6 months, which would lead to a dip followed by an explosion. And that would seem to align with everything here. Patrick?
I agree. I mean, even over there, it was interesting to hear them even just talk about Bitcoin at the conference. as a miner, I just couldn't even believe that Robert Kiyosaki was one of the guys that said at the end, hey, Bitcoin is definitely the strategy. Well, he said Bitcoin and a jet, to be honest. He said everyone should invest in a jet so that you can get it the hell out of wherever you are. Every answer he had ended with a jet is your solution. But, everyone up there talked about Bitcoin, except because they were asked at the last question, would you rather choose Bitcoin or gold or silver in a 10-year outlook? And I think it was like 2 out of the 4 panelists chose Bitcoin unequivocally. Robert chose all 3 and his jet. And I believe Ninja chose gold.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Chris Taylor from Financial Prepper, he was out there too. And he was like, he pointed out, like, imagine this conversation existing on that stage 3 years ago. You wouldn't have these people talking about Bitcoin in the same breath of gold and silver. But we were at a gold and silver conference and Bitcoin was prominently discussed. But I also noticed that Bill pointed out Cardano, and that's one of your favorites, Patrick. And I think we have one more story to talk about today before we get into a little bit more of the the off the beaten path. But Cardano is talking about yet another stable coin. Now, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, I do. So Cardano to me is one of my favorite chains. I've been staking in Cardano and staking over there for quite a while. Dan at Crypto Capital Venture, shout out to him. He's been keeping me up to date as to what's going on. And after the last Basil hard fork right here, it was pretty cool because them and Cody partnered together to create what's called JED, not DJED, or it's called JED as I was told. So this is the new stable coin that we are going to be seeing, supported by the Cardano and Cody infrastructure, backed by Cardano's native token, ADA. So it's just going to be really amazing to see how this continues to move forward. That, Cardano is moving forward and is continuing to get partnerships and definitely building on value. And I just love the fact that Bill even brought it up because it's totally underrepresented in the space. And I think that we get so focused on the things, Bill said something like, I'm really glad Binance didn't fail because if it did, it would have been the end of crypto. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that specifically because I think that Bitcoin would still survive. And I think there are going to be some strong chains with utility like Theta and Cardano and Matic that have strong partnerships in the industries and utilization and a use case. So, but I do agree that it could have been the end of 99% of cryptos.
Yeah, and to go back to the title, Jed, much like the word gin, I think that's really they like fancy names on Cardano project. Charles Hoskinson really does that. But I wanted to ask Bill, because he mentioned Cardano, and he also mentioned that Ethereum being the people's coin and how that could go up. Do you see that this would be a little bit different than, say, 2018 with all these different contenders? You have Charles Hoskinson's Cardano, you have Gavin Wood's Polkadot. Do you think these contenders and like Matic that offer layer one smart contract platforms, do you think that might eat into the upside of Ethereum?
No, I think it's going to it's going to validate the whole reason why Ethereum exists. Like, for example, if you live in New Jersey or Connecticut, there is more than one way to get into New York City, right? You need more than one highway, more than one bridge, more than one train station to get to these places. And then in the case of the internet, you're going to need the new FANG, right? So instead of Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, you're going to have, Bitcoin is a standalone, but for Web3, you're going to have ETH, you're going to have Cardano, you're going to have interoperability with Polkadot, right? You may have Cosmos, Matic, Optimism. There's going to be that 6 or 7 coin group that's going to lead to what I hope is the people's internet.
Yeah, I think that's great. But Dylan, you want to throw out any other altcoins that you like out there for those contenders?
Yeah, I just want to throw out just another perspective, and it's something to think about. Is that I've heard? I think I heard this from Jeff Booth. As when you're in a failing system, you start to see signs and signals of people trying to take more risk to escape that failing system. And as they do that, they tend to put their money, time, and resources in not projects or things that have any sort of substantial value behind them, but that they think other people will join so that they can escape with more money than they had, so they can survive. And I'd be curious to see or have the perspective is, are a lot of these layer one smart contract platforms, are a lot of these crypto platforms juxtaposed against something like Bitcoin, are they like the opposite, or are they like the fiat version or counter to what Bitcoin brings to the table in terms of being decentralized, being distributed, being censorship resistant, or are they one and the same? I know in like a lot of Bitcoin circles, that's what a lot of Bitcoiners tend to a view that a lot of them tend to express. But just wanted to bring that up as a perspective or something to think about.
No, I think that all those different perspectives are important. All these different changes that are happening out there are important. That's why we have this conversation. But we have two more things to touch on. One is going to be a little bit out there. We'll get there to that in a minute. But we are preppers. So we want to talk about one more story about getting prepared for different contingencies. We don't know what's going to happen. But there's been a lot of discussion about 2A and concealed carry. And this particular story that came out from Governor Newsom, they framed it like saying they're targeting legal gun owners, and it's another infringement on concealed carry and how difficult that's going to be to even get in a state like California compared to illegal gun owners. And there's a lot of discussion over concealed carry, and there's lots of states that are just either allowing it or just saying you don't even need the concealed carry permission because you already have 2A. So why do you need a permit for something that's a right? So it's an interesting topic. Patrick, I know you're a big pew guy, just trying to keep it YouTube friendly, see what we can do there. But what do you think about these 2A laws and all this insanity that's going on with these regulations and you could say overreach?
So this is a big nothing burger to me, this whole LA story, because if you live in LA and you're a listener from LA, you'll know it's not possible for anyone to get a license to carry a gun in LA right now anyways. It's really, really difficult. You have to pretty much be law enforcement or have connections. It's just not available. It's one of the hardest states in the entire nation to get. They have no reciprocity. So to me, this is nothing at all that's than what we've had for the last several years. I think there are issues happening. Like right now, they are trying to take away gun stabilizing arm braces. They're now saying that those are now going to be considered as part of the rifle, which makes it a short barrel rifle, which makes it illegal. So you have to get a tax stamp, all about money. It really is nothing different than what we already have. So I believe it's all about money. California hasn't changed anything. They're not going to allow anyone to carry. But you know what? The reality is the people who don't care about the laws are going to break them anyways. And we know that. And that's why we're prepared and not scared. In our community, we have the carry a gun a day. We can have a gun on Monday, a gun on Tuesday, a different gun on Thursday. And on Saturday, we can carry all 7 if we'd like. There is no different ways to put it. So for me in Oregon, it's a different story, but it's also legal to open carry in Oregon. So for me, I'd say it just depends on where you live. It's important to know your laws, but this story didn't particularly say anything to me because the California laws are so ridiculously strict already. Even with ARs, they keep calling them, assault rifles. Well, we don't have to get into that, but the reality is they even limit the magazine capacity down there. You have to have ridiculously small magazine capacities and special ways and special tools to take in and out the mag that it's just a ridiculous nuisance to be a gun owner in California. Another reason why I'd just get out of there.
Yeah, I think Patrick covered it pretty extensively there. So either you, Dylan, I know you, Colorado, they have a lot of guns, and I know Texas is big with weaponry. Bill or Dylan, you have any other comments on those?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. I don't think a government should tell people that they can't protect themselves. So there's obvious folly there, right? Particularly since I'm sure there are parts of LA where people are afraid. Now, that said, okay, people who can carry, we need to be as responsible as we can. So we need to make sure that, if we carry, we know how to use it. We go to the range, right? We also know when not to use it, right? We know basic self-defense, basic training. You can see sometimes when you see, law enforcement does something that winds up on CNN. If you're a warrior, you got to train like one, you got to think like one, because you know what? If the people that can defend themselves make mistakes or are morons, they make it all the harder for people in LA to get the rights that they should have. So it's up to the best thing you can do for the people in California is to be a responsible, safe citizen and take your 2A rights and make sure that you're an example of what to do, not an example of what not to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I actually told Patrick this story about my grandfather who was a police officer in Philadelphia. I asked him when I was much younger, have you ever used your weapon? Or he said that he had never fired it and holstered it once. And he was a police officer for like 20 years. So it's just the ability to have it and protect it and knows what you're doing with it. You don't necessarily have to use it, but at least it's, you have the comfort that it's there.
Well, I kind of disagree with that. I think you do have to use it. The statistics show that if you're an inexperienced gun owner and you don't go out and train with it, that you're more likely to cause harm to yourself or someone you love or be hurt by your weapon if you don't know what you're doing. So if you are not someone that's comfortable using your weapon system and you're not comfortable training with it, then I don't believe you really should be carrying at all. I believe it's something that should stay at home and you have no business carrying it around if you're not training to identify what is a threat, what is not a threat, and how to actually conceal. And there's just so much more that goes to it. Identifying if there's a target behind a child that's there behind your target, you don't want to take that shot. So I disagree. I think if you have one, you should go to the range and figure out how it works and make sure that you're comfortable with it. And if you don't like it, find a different one.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. You don't need to actively use it. I agree with the training 100%. I agree with that. So I mean to rephrase that. But Patrick, you said it much more eloquently than I did. That's what's the beauty of the show. It's not just my voice; it's all of our voices.
Yeah, I believe you should have one, even if you don't use it, though. Just keep it at home. You should definitely have one as a gun owner. I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't. And man, the day where they try to confiscate guns away, it's going to be crazy. It's just not going to work here in the U.S. There are so many elderly guys in my community who are farmers and who have been around the block, and life in prison doesn't mean anything to them anymore. It's just like a couple of years, and they'll go and be the first ones on the front line, and then you're going to have the moms right behind them. And if you have a mom out there saying to protect the dads that are on the front lines, you're going to send out all their husbands because they don't want to die that night. They're going to do exactly what their wives tell them to do. So these guys are going to walk out with no training and have no idea what they're doing, but they will show up to protect everyone's rights. I mean, it's just going to be a cluster if they try. It just cannot and will not happen in the United States of America as we know it today.
Well, that was definitely a topic when we went up to Canada last weekend because they don't have that ability up there. They don't have that right. So, but we also talked about something else on the way up there, Patrick. We talked about a lot of things, but we talked about a few different operations and government stories, and I think it's time that I share one with a few folks. And do you remember a certain conversation about MK Ultra? Do you remember that a little bit?
Dog, I tried to forget that conversation. Listen, you guys all know how I feel about this. There are some things I'm like, okay, but how did this happen, right? So I can throw it back, and then the reality is I don't really want to know. So you can go ahead and scare some of our audience if you want.
Well, I'm just going to leave the breadcrumbs out there, and I will say that on Wikipedia, there's an entry for MK Ultra, and it also mentions a couple of other operations. There's lots of operations or projects like Project Bluebird, Project Artichoke. The Artichoke is linked properly, but if you click on the link for Project Bluebird, it doesn't work. It takes you to Artichoke, which is interesting that Wikipedia has a bad link there. But this is a story. MK Ultra is a story about the 1950s and what happened basically after World War II and the fear of communism. But there was a lot of programs and a lot of studies that the military did and the government did about using pharmaceuticals of different kinds for reprogramming people or trying to extract information from people. And it was anywhere from Project Chatter to Project MK Ultra to Bluebird to Artichoke, and they've been using it ever since. And they were classified, they were declassified, I believe, after probably when the Kennedy information came out. But there was always these rumors about MK Ultra, and this is basically, if you take it to its fruition, and I'll post a video, I'll include a link about these videos, and it's a good YouTube video about the different projects. But this is, again, why we don't trust the government, for example. But this is a project or several projects that they did to influence people and to basically brainwash them. And that was like the term came back from the 50s, and China used it as well. And this was a recipe for just brainwashing people and implanting different information and then triggering them later. And there's been lots of either evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, or implications that MK Ultra is still in existence today. And it's basically tied to the sleeper cells. So I'll leave those breadcrumbs out there for people to do their own research.
Wait, I need to say something. Bill, on our show, we have what we call the buckets. Bucket 1 is where, like, we know it's true. Like Bitcoin is valuable would be bucket 1, maybe even bucket 2 to some people, but gold is valuable is like bucket 1. We could agree. Then there's the other ones where, like, hey, you can make silver out of other metals, maybe bucket 2. Okay, I'm not sure. Where do you consider this? Like, is this like, hey, Donald Trump, conspiracy theories to the right bucket 3, or do you consider this to be fact about MK Ultra bucket 1? 1 to 3, where are you?
Well, I would say I'd be comfortably in the middle. Let's take one thing we've learned over the last year. Conspiracy theories are about 65% fact. The left's been right about a couple. The right's picked up a couple wins lately. We talked about this in the beginning, right? The information that you actually need is not in the news. It's probably not even in a history book, assuming they even teach history anymore. Okay. So if you've read something and gone, wow, that sure is interesting. I didn't hear about it on the 6 o'clock news, but it feels like it could be right. It might be. And it probably is. And you know who told you that? Elon Musk. Elon Musk has got everybody looking at everything that's controversial or conspiratorial in a whole different way. Because Musk walked in, opened the file cabinet, and was like, oh, the conspiracy guys were right about whatever was going on here with censorship. So, fringe has a funny way of becoming fashion like that.
Yeah.
Dylan, where are you at with the bucket theory on this?
Jason Bourne to me is when you described it, it sounded like something out of like the Bourne Ultimatum, where they're like secretly training people. Then I'm like, how is that even possible? How would you not realize that you left for an undisclosed amount of time and went somewhere else? You got reprogrammed, and as soon as there's like a code word said, you turn psycho. No, this is something out of a movie. That's, to me, I'm like in between bucket 3 and 4.
And my answer to that was, imagine if all those operatives were no longer breathing at the end of that operation that they got triggered. Maybe that would be the way to exit and end that program.
Yeah, and then we stopped the discussion because I couldn't think of a good point to like rebut it. So we changed the topic.
Well, let's change it over to Dylan. Dylan, close us out. What do you think today?
I think that is probably more in the realm of truth than fiction for that stuff. Because look, just if you do any sort of risk management, you have to identify the potential threats and what your enemies are doing. And I've read a couple of books, an author named Ann Jacobson. I think she's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. She got several books on these topics, some fascinating stuff. But she talks about some of these declassified files from the CIA, where the one in particular I read was on how they spent millions of dollars to fund research into ESP and remote viewing. And it sounds so far-fetched, and some of the conclusions that they came to were that they couldn't prove without a reasonable doubt that people weren't capable of that. That for some reason there are certain individuals out there that were, no matter whatever test they put in front of them, were capable of displaying powers of sight that couldn't be proven by science and the teams at the time. And they spent millions of dollars in that because their whole idea was, well, if our enemies are using that against us, we need to at least allocate some sort of budget to understand it and figure it out. So it really doesn't surprise me that they would do this with psychedelic drugs or anything like that, and trying to reprogram people and implant memories and implant commands in people. It doesn't surprise me that they would research it. Now, how effective that is the real question. And in the book and what I understood about the experience with ESP is that it was kind of effective. The accuracy of the data couldn't always be depended upon. And they ended up using better, more consistent methods most of the time because they were just more reliable. And so I can imagine with these, programmed people that maybe it's not like a movie where it's just a snap or it's just a word or a phrase or a signal, then they go rogue. Maybe that happens for some people, but it's possible that it's not as accurate as they may like or lead you to believe with a lot of the, Hollywood fiction.
Well,
I remember you were talking
Hollywood
about The Simpsons, right? You were talking about The Simpsons at some point, and you're like, how do they get it all right? And it's just so weird that The Simpsons is what I use to identify my reality and whether or not I'm being straight or not. So to me, I'm just sitting here going okay, so Jeff, you're at a 2, Bill's at a 2, Dylan's at a 2 or a 1, I'm at a 4. So on average, we're about a 3. Rough math, because I don't want to believe it. And I would only hate one thing more would be to hear Cliff High talk about this. I think I would lose my mind. You know what I mean? Because I bet you he would say some stuff I couldn't handle it.
Well, I think that, Dylan hinted at the Hollywood vision. Patrick mentioned Jason Bourne. I think that there's something to be said about the predictive programming. You talked about The Simpsons. We'll talk about Operation Looking Glass another day. But speaking
and that
of
Minority
video,
Report video you made me watch, that
the
was
Minority
scary
Report video. Yeah, that's a good movie
I didn't
too.
like that one either.
Well, we'll talk about movies another time, but you can watch They Live and a few others too, which are really good movies. But there's lots of good videos out there, and I want to share one last time Bill Noble on YouTube, Notorious Bill. Check out Crypto Noble on YouTube to follow more from Bill. Make sure you follow him, like and subscribe, get all his videos and content. Follow him on Twitter at crypto_noble. Be sure to do that. Bill, I want to thank you on behalf of Patrick and Dylan for being here. You've been a fabulous guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gents, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bill.
It's been our pleasure.
All right. Dylan, any last thoughts?
No. Just, again, just go out there, do your research, stay tuned in. Lots happening. You don't want to miss it.
Bill, final thoughts.
Don't sleep on the bull market, and don't forget about Satoshi. Don't forget about Satoshi, right? He told you how to be free, and we need to take his advice.
Patrick, you're all grins. What do you got to say?
Guys, share, subscribe, grow the community, help us out, but also please take this information and do something with it. Don't allow this information to just sit here. You've listened to this. If you've made it to this point in the movie or in the show, please just drop us a comment. Tell us what spiked your interest. Tell us what you want to see more of. But overall, more than anything, it's time to act. If you have information and knowledge and you do nothing with it, shame on you.
Yes, and it's all about being prepared and getting this information is valuable, but share it with someone else. Help someone else to wake up and get more information, get informed, and look for a book report coming up soon about Barron Trump. We'll be talking about that one probably on a future episode, but I just want to remind everybody to be prepared and not scared. And thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.